ਆਪ ਸਭਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਮੇਰੇ YouTube ਚੈਨਲ 'ਤੇ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ। ਅੱਜ ਆਪ ਜੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਡੇਜਾ ਵੂ ਫਿਲਮ ਦਸਤਾਵੇਜ਼ੀ ਹੈ ਜੋ ਦਿਖਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ। ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਦਿਖਾਉਣ ਦਾ ਸਿਹਰਾ ਸੁਖਵੰਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਹੁੰਦਲ ਅਤੇ ਉਸ ਦੀ ਟੀਮ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ 2021 ਵਿੱਚ ਜੋ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਚੱਲਿਆ ਸੀ ਉਸ ਦਾ ਵਰਣਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ।
And Swas and First Nations who have been on this land for thousands of years. So last week we screened around 9 films, and it was a mix of fiction, non-fiction, short and feature. If I sum up what we felt watching those films in 7 or 8 points, short points, it would be: first, what we saw was a beautiful display of memory, metaphor, and resistance unfolding right before our eyes on the screen. Second, a play between the interior personal and exterior political, pulling us into deep reflection. Third, archiving memory, exposing erasers, both historical and ongoing. Fourth, turning us, the audience, into witnessing publics, ethically and morally accountable. Fifth, subtly alluding to the post-colonial state's coercive power and its persecution of the other. Sixth, speaking in metaphors where silence is enforced, finding ways to say the unsayable. Seven, family as a site for excavating memories of collective experiences. 8. Tracing the afterlife of the partition and its continuous presence in the present. And 9. The social location of the filmmaker and choice of narrative forms. So these were the things that emerged from those films. Talking and engaging with multiplicities of realities, both as a practitioner, as a film form, and so on and so forth. Also, it's important to remember that the times in which these films are being made and screened in India are not normal times. So it makes very difficult for filmmakers to pick on a theme, treat it in a manner that it can be said, and then once it is said, to be able to survive the consequences of saying it. We normally won't think about these things sitting here in Canada, but for those who are making these films and those who are located in India, these things matter a lot. So today now we'll start with screening of today's film, Deja Vu. It gives a good, beautiful context to the farmers' movement, a global context to the farmers' movement in India. And Deja Vu, as the name suggests, it was something that had already happened to the US-owned family farms since 1970s onwards. And gradually we see how the whole infrastructure which supported the family farms in the US was dismantled with the march of corporate capitalism in the agriculture. And this is exactly the same, these are the same forces, these are the same issues that were attempted but put on hold by the stiff resistance by the Indian farmers. And this is an ongoing battle. We'll start with this. Thank you very much for joining today.
So what is deja vu? What is the meaning of that?
It's just a feeling that something has happened before. पहला हो चुका जिन्हें कोई चीज है वो तो ये दोनों बार महसूस करते हैं.
Year 2020. On a late November morning, hundreds of thousands of farmers converged at the capital city of India, New Delhi. Ghazipur on the east, Singhu to the north, Tikri on the west, and several other border points. Their makeshift camps along the roadside stretched on for tens of kilometers. And clearly, they were in no hurry to head back. For one full year, they stayed put. In the process, it mushroomed into the largest such sit-in protest the world has witnessed in recent times.
Lost markets. Under this bill, farmers will be eased into a market-oriented policy. I certainly don't have to explain the benefits of free and open markets to you. The solution to the world agricultural problem is to get government out of the way and let farmers compete.
So 4 of us set out on a 10,000 kilometer journey into what is called the heartland of America, to hear what small farmers have to say. After all, just like their Indian counterparts, 90% of American farmers are small farmers as well. For us urban folks, our connection with grains, cereal, dairy is through supermarkets, not farming. Farming is scarcely in our minds. Farmers even less so. Our eyes glaze over when we hear words like support price or parity. But actually, they are life and death for farmers. Or who knew that elevators play such a key role in farming? Yes, elevators. Economics 101 had taught us that modernization, efficiency, competition, market access increase production, generate more profits, and fetch consumers the best deal. As the saying goes, a rising tide lifts all boats. Or does it? So we wanted to find out who benefited from these reforms, who lost out. What did the small farmers get? Their promised share of milk and honey, or something else? Joel Greener, an ex-dairy farmer. This is what is left of his 150-year-old family farm in Wisconsin.
My family has farmed here in Monroe County since 1872. Always had farms, but when there is not enough income to pay the bills, you just have to make the hard choice. And so I sold the dairy cows in October of 2013. And I started working then nights at Ocean Spray Cranberries in Toma.
Chris Peterson, a small independent hog farmer in Iowa, one of the last few left.
Yeah, I went through the bankruptcy because I had massive debt. When the pigs went to hell, all the hog equipment is worth nothing. You know, we lost a lot. We're still paying on debt 20 years later. many years we went without health insurance. Period. None.
Jim Goodman was a small organic dairy farmer. This is where his farm used to be.
My grandfather had bought the original cattle that started the herd back in 1904, so that was a kind of a long history of the herd, and we used to pasture right outside these windows, and it was always so nice that we could sit down at night and be eating, and the cows would see us through the windows, and they'd come up and look in the windows. It was almost like they were part of the family. One of the cows in the herd just before we sold it was a young one. Her name was Lara. As soon as she saw you were getting close, she'd be turning around and looking at you. And when you went in to milk her, she'd turn around and kind of rub up against you and push you up against the stall. It was like she really enjoyed people. She really enjoyed you being there. We had to sell our dairy herd in 2018 because we were no longer making enough money to keep the dairy going.
He said that government was the problem, that we needed less government, we needed less regulations, we needed a more free market. And what we really got was monopoly.
One of the things that I've witnessed is how these corporations come in and are able to take that kind of control over your market.
The way they do it is they knock off their competitors so that they don't have any competitors.
So let's say it's a small food processor. The bigger company comes in, sets up a shop. It finds out where that smaller company is selling its finished products. And so it'll lower its price, even sometimes below the cost of production.
And they even buy competitors just to close them down.
They weaken them, and then they make them an offer, and that poor business man or woman has no choice but to sell. Well, once they begin to take out the processors, that's the buyers, farmers' buyers. Now there's less buyers that the farmer have to sell to. So now they begin to squeeze the farmer. So they say, sell to us direct, we'll give you the markup that the middleman's getting. So if that's 10%, 15%, you're gonna get 15% more. I'll tell you what happened. They drove out the local distributor. They drove out the local buyers. And then we looked around, and there was only one buyer, and that was that person that told me I was gonna get all the money. They didn't have to give me anything. Because in America, they've carved up this country into regions. So if you look at a region in the United States, oftentimes there's just one buyer. And you either take that price or they just won't buy your product.
ਜਾਂ ਮਜਬੂਰੀਆਂ ਨਾਲੇ ਗਿਫਟ ਆਗਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਮਜਬੂਰੀ ਕਾਰਨ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਲੈਣਾ ਪੈਂਦਾਗਾ ਹੋਰ ਕੋਈ ਹੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਜੀ ਇਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਬੀਜ ਨੇ ਜਾਂ ਝੋਨੇ ਦਾ ਜਾਂ ਕਣਕ ਦਾ ਜੋ ਮਨਮਰਜ਼ੀ ਦਾ ਰੇਟ ਲਾਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਦੁੱਗਣੀ ਕੀਮਤ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬੀਜ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ
So the price of inputs are getting very costlier every year in every season, but the price of our output, our agricultural produce is gradually increasing. So there is a huge gap between the input and the output. This is the main reason of peasant crisis, suicides, highly indebtedness in India.
ਮੈਂ ਆਪਦੀ ਜ਼ਮੀਨ ਨੂੰ ਵਾਹਣ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਬੈਂਕ ਤੋਂ ਕਰਜ਼ਾ ਲੈਤਾਗਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਸ਼ੌਂਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਅੱਗ ਲਾਉਣ ਦਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਮਹਿੰਗਾ ਖਰਚਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਮਹਿੰਗਾ ਡੀਜ਼ਲ ਫੂਕਣਾ ਪੈਂਦਾਗਾ ਤੇ ਮਹਿੰਗੇ ਸੰਦ ਲੈਣੇ ਪੈਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਮਹਿੰਗੇ ਸੰਦ ਲੈਣ ਕਰਕੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬੈਂਕ ਤੋਂ ਕਰਜ਼ਾ ਲੈਣਾ ਪੈਂਦਾਗਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਸਾਡੀ ਫਸਲ ਦਾ ਰੇਟ ਸਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਿਲਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬੈਂਕ ਦਾ ਕਰਜ਼ਾ ਮੋੜਨ 'ਚ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਲ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਬੈਂਕ ਦੀ ਕਿਸ਼ਤ ਨਾ ਮੋੜਨ ਕਰਕੇ ਬੈਂਕ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਾਡਾ ਟਰੈਕਟਰ ਹੈਗਾ ਜੋ ਪੁੱਤ ਵਰਗਾ ਜੱਟ ਦਾ ਜ਼ਿਮੀਂਦਾਰ ਦਾ ਟਰੈਕਟਰ ਹੁੰਦਾਗਾ ਉਹ ਲੈ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਟਰੈਕਟਰ ਨਾ ਕਰਕੇ ਨਾ ਤਾਂ ਜ਼ਿਮੀਂਦਾਰ ਟਰੈਕਟਰ ਤੋਂ ਬਿਨਾਂ ਖੇਤੀ ਕਰ ਸਕਦਾਗਾ ਜੇ ਖੇਤੀ ਨਾ ਹੀ ਪੈਸੇ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਜ਼ਿਮੀਂਦਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਹੋਰ ਕੋਈ ਹੱਲ ਨਾ ਲੱਭਦਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਉਸਨੇ ਉਹ ਆਪਦਾ ਗਲ ਭਰਾਹਾ ਲੈਣ ਲਈ ਮਜਬੂਰ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਗਾ
What are they, we asked. CAFOs, we were told. CAFOs? Yeah, CAFOs. C-A-F-O. Concentrated Animal Feedlot Operations, where animals are kept under the most inhuman conditions. No sunlight, no fresh air. Stuck in small bunk spaces, the animals remain drenched in their own urine and feces. Their excreta pollute the soil everywhere, and the nauseating stench fills the air for miles.
When farmers are desperate to try to stay on the farm, lots of times the big corporations will offer a contract. And that contract will be a price that just barely keeps farmers in business.
We know some young farmers around here who'll get a loan to put up a CAFO, and it's a lot of money.
Because they got to mortgage their home and their farm so they could raise Tyson chickens or Pilgrim Pride's chickens.
The farmer is responsible for all the manure. The farmer is also responsible for taking care of the animals on a daily basis. The only thing the farmer isn't responsible for is getting a decent price.
So there are very few companies that you can get a contract from. There is no competition in that.
If that company doesn't send them another flock of chickens or another load of pigs, there's no one else out there that wants their building.
If you can't change it to a different crop or a different livestock, they're stuck.
And they owe all that money to the bank. You never get out of debt. If they speak up or speak out, they're going to be done. They're going to be broke because they're not going to get the next load of hogs. Why? Because there's only one company that wants to put any animal in that building. Because if you upset them, they'll bankrupt you. I signed a contract thinking I was going to get all the middlemen's money, and I become a servant under servitude to that corporation for the rest of my life because they're never going to let me get out of debt.
It is said that words are one of the biggest weapons of modern times. Name something right, name it well, you can even make the rose smell quite different.
Pepsi came and entered the market of Punjab to buy potatoes. They did a contract for 5 rupees per kg. In the normal market, the price was 10 rupees per kg. When farmers said, okay, this is the price of the retail in the market, they said, we have a contract with you.
अगले साल जब बम्पर पैदावार आलू की हुई,
and the prices of the market slashed to 3.5 rupees. But they had a contract to sell the crop at 5 rupees per kg.
तो कंपनी ने क्या किया कि कड़ा लेके आई, बोला जो कड़ा ये जो आलू इस कड़े में से गुजरेगा वही आलू खरीदेंगे.
Corporates will have thousands of excuses to not give the money that they have done in the contract.
बीज में देंगे, फर्टिलाइजर में देंगे और उसमें बहुत कंडीशन लगाएंगे. किसान तो 2 रुपया अगर किसी से केसीसी पर लेता है, उसके इतने नॉर्म्स हैं वो भी नहीं पढ़ता, वो सिर्फ साइन करता है. आप अगर गाड़ी लेते हो, उसके पूरे अगर नॉर्म्स आप पढ़ लोगे तो आप गाड़ी आपकी तीसरी पीढ़ी भी नहीं लेने की बैंक से. तो यही कॉन्ट्रैक्ट फार्मिंग है. हमारा हुनर छीनना ही कॉन्ट्रैक्ट फार्मिंग है.
We thought we had done our homework, but nothing had prepared us for this real-time crash course. Our hard drives were close to full, we were overwhelmed, but we still had miles to go.
I started out in 1978 with as many as 20 wheat packers that I could sell to. On a Monday morning, you might show up to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, and there would be a cattle buyer sleeping in his car at the front gate, wanting to buy your cattle, wanting to get first in line and get those cattle. But then as I went on, there was a real sense that there was something up, that the big meat packers were cooperating and not competing. Between Christmas and New Year's of 1998, I hadn't been able to sell my cattle out of the current feedlot that I own now, and I still had animals coming in. Finally, the national beef buyer came by. Finally just said, Don, what am I gonna do? You're my only buyer. And he says, well, Mike, I just as well tell you, I've been told not to buy your cattle. I had been blackballed by all of the packers. I could not sell my cattle anymore. I simply called the Secretary of Agriculture, Dan Glickman, at the time. He was a Kansas representative before. I knew him. I said, why don't you make the markets fair again so we all have access to the marketplace? And he said, well, you know, Mike, in this modern age of globalization, we need big companies that can do business globally. And I said, whoa, what about the small guy? What about the farmer feeder, the family operation? What about those people? Well, you know, Mike, it's get big or get out.
We were near the end of our journey, and it finally dawned on us. Market reform is one of those misnomers. It does not create competition or free markets. It creates massive monopolies with the full patronage of political power.
And then they're struggling to even pay their bills, which includes, grocery bills.
And I like to call it the land of false promises. Oh, the false seed of optimism. You go out here and you put this seed in the ground, we're going to take care of you. And you wake up one day, you need to leave. What? You need to leave because the banker owns this farm.
Their answer to poverty was more poverty, to drive people off the land, to become workers in the city.
And they couldn't get better jobs in the cities. They would end up as custodians in schools or janitors or whatever they could do to survive, and they were very unhappy because they weren't on the farm.
Now farmers who lose their land might be hired to milk the cows, or might be hired just to haul the manure. We now have people whose job is to haul manure every day. That's all they do is haul trucks, loads of manure to dump somewhere.
ਬਣਾਇਆ ਜਾਵੇ ਵੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਗਲੇ ਸਾਲ ਨੂੰ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਉਹ ਤੋਂ ਇਨ ਐਡਵਾਂਸ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਾਂਗੇ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖ ਕੇ ਵੀ ਇਹਦੀ ਇਸ ਕਿਸਮ ਦੀ ਇਵੈਂਟ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੈਗੀ, ਲੋਕੀ ਮਹਿਸੂਸ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਆ। ਸੋ ਪੈਸੇ ਕਿਤੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਉਂਦੇ, ਪਰ ਜੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੇ ਡੋਨੇਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਦੇ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ, ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਕੋਲੋਂ ਖਰਚ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਮਝਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਵੀ ਇਸ ਕਿਸਮ ਦੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਹੋਣੀਆਂ ਚਾਹੀਦੀਆਂ। ਦੂਸਰੀ ਗੱਲ ਇਹ ਆ ਵੀ ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਫਿਲਮ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ 5 ਅਕਤੂਬਰ ਨੂੰ, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹਦਾ ਨਾਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਫਾਰਮਿੰਗ ਦਾ ਰੈਵੋਲੂਸ਼ਨ, ਇਨਕਲਾਬ ਦੀ ਖੇਤੀ, ਉਹ 5 ਅਕਤੂਬਰ ਨੂੰ ਦਿਖਾ ਰਹੇ ਆ। ਮੇਰੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਜੋ ਬਹੁਤਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਕੋਲ WhatsApp ਨੰਬਰ ਵਗੈਰਾ ਹੈ, ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਭੇਜਾਂਗੇ, ਸੋ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਯਾਦ ਰੱਖਿਓ। ਪਰ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ 5 ਅਕਤੂਬਰ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ, ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਮਝੋ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਖਤਮ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਆ। ਇਹ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਵੀ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਦਿਹਾੜੀ ਵੀ 4 ਵਜੇ ਤੱਕ ਫਿਲਮ ਚੱਲਣੀ ਆ, ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਚੱਲਣੀ ਆ। ਤੇ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਫਿਲਮ 5 ਅਕਤੂਬਰ ਨੂੰ, ਉਹਦਾ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟਰ ਵੀ ਉੱਥੇ ਹੋਊਗੀ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਸਕੋਗੇ। ਤੀਜੀ ਗੱਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਵੀ ਕੁਛ ਲੋਕੀ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਫਿਲਮ ਦੇਖ ਕੇ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰੀਏ, ਪਰ ਜਿਸ ਢੰਗ ਨਾਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਕੈਜੂਲ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਆ ਉਹ ਇਹ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਆ ਵੀ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਅਗਲੀਆਂ ਫਿਲਮਾਂ ਵੀ ਦਿਖਾ ਲੈਣੀਆਂ, ਆਪਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਕੈਜੂਲ ਇਸ ਢੰਗ ਨਾਲ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਵੀ ਫਾਰਮਲ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕੋਈ ਇਸ ਕਿਸਮ ਦੇ ਲੈਕਚਰ ਜਾਂ ਇਸ ਕਿਸਮ ਦੇ ਕਮੈਂਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਰੱਖਣੇ। ਆਪਾਂ ਲੰਚ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ, ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜੇ ਨਾਲ ਮਿਲੋ ਗਿਲੋ, ਆਪਣੇ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜੇ ਨਾਲ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਸਾਂਝੇ ਕਰੋ। ਅਸੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਬਣੇ ਜਿਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਲੋਕ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰੇ, ਨਾ ਕਿ ਕੋਈ ਇੱਥੇ ਖੜਾ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਲੈਕਚਰ ਦੇਵੇ ਤਾਂ ਦੂਜੇ ਸੁਣ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਤੀਜੀ ਗੱਲ ਇਹ ਆ। ਸੋ ਹੁਣ ਲੰਚ ਤਿਆਰ ਆ, ਵੈਜੀਟੇਰੀਅਨ ਤੇ ਚਿਕਨ ਆਲਾ ਪੀਜ਼ਾ ਖਾਓ ਤੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰੋ। ਧੰਨਵਾਦ।
ਇਸ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖਣ ਜੀ ਦਾ ਆਪ ਜੀਆਂ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ। ਜੇ ਆਪ ਜੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਪਸੰਦ ਆਈ ਹੋਵੇ, ਲਾਈਕ ਅਤੇ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕਰਨਾ ਅਤੇ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਸਬਸਕ੍ਰਾਈਬ ਕਰਨ ਤੋਂ ਵੀ ਨਾ ਰੁਕਣਾ। ਸਬਸਕ੍ਰਿਪਸ਼ਨ ਦਾ ਕੋਈ ਪੈਸਾ ਨਹੀਂ, ਸਿਰਫ ਸਬਸਕ੍ਰਿਪਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਆਪਣਾ ਅੰਗੂਠਾ ਲਗਾਉਣਾ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਨਾਲ ਸਬਸਕ੍ਰਾਈਬ ਹੋ ਜਾਏਗਾ। ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ।